This week in the enterprise security news, Yubico delivers new security key, the YubiKey 5C NFC. ManageEngine enhances its ADSelfService Plus, now supporting multi-factor authentication for VPNs. Sysdig is partnering with VulnDB to get more vulnerability intelligence. 3Signs is time for a pen test. And CrowdStrike is expanding support for AWS workloads and container deployments. In the second segment, Corey Williams, VP of Marketing at Idaptive by CyberArk, is how they're doing that. She's going to talk about exploring identity security and its role in the modern enterprise. We also welcome in the final segment Braden Rogers, Senior VP of Global Pre-Sales Engineering at Mimecast, to talk about cloud-based risk, cyber resiliency even. Stay tuned for all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Today, every business is a digital business. Most of us are migrating workloads to the cloud, adopting DevOps tools, rolling out RPA software, and supporting a remote workforce. While opportunity is great, so is the risk of advanced cyber attacks. Many high-profile breaches start with a compromise of privileged credentials. CyberArk is the #1 leader in privileged access management. Talk to CyberArk today to secure privileged access for humans and machines across hybrid and cloud environments and on endpoints. Learn more at securityweekly.com/CyberArk and stay one step ahead of the attackers. Cybercriminals are opportunistically targeting industries that continue to operate full tilt during the coronavirus shutdowns, and their attacks have grown more sophisticated. Given this shifting landscape, taking the appropriate countermeasures becomes paramount. Mimecast Email Security 3.0 helps you evolve from a perimeter-based security strategy to one that is comprehensive and pervasive with cyber resiliency in mind. From the company that stops at nothing to block cyber threats, Mimecast is offering a fully featured 90-day web security service. Visit securityweekly.com/Mimecast to learn more. Detecting and responding to threats in the cloud is harder than doing it on-prem. Even when you do have the visibility you need, legacy security workflows weren't designed for the speed and complexity of cloud environments. Cloud-native security solutions from ExtraHop are purpose-built to spot threats across the hybrid attack surface, provide detailed investigation steps, and help you automate response. Request your 30-day free trial at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. Welcome to episode 198 of Enterprise Security Weekly for September 9th, 2020. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, joined remotely by Mr. Matt Alderman. Matt, welcome.
Happy Wednesday. Crazy week for the Security Weekly crew.
Yes, yes, very crazy week.
But I showed up. You know, I got snow out there. I'm sure John got some snow. I mean...
Yeah, I don't know why. I thought we were going to have John.
I thought so too.
I guess not. It's okay. We'll press on without him. We miss him dearly. Of course, we've got announcements. Security Weekly is ramping up our webcast technical training schedule for the rest of 2020. In September, learn how to extend the enterprise network for remote workers and protect your home network. Find out why traditional data security can't be zero trust, and learn how to reduce the blast radius of your cloud infrastructure. You can sign up for all those webcasts at securityweekly.com/webcasts or /demand and view the previously recorded webcasts. On to the security news this week. I think it was interesting. I saw our own acquisition announcement in our news feeds, which was kind of nice. And for those that maybe did not tune into Paul Security Weekly last week or see it in the news and social media, so far we have been acquired by the Cyber Risk Alliance. Very excited to partner with the fine folks at Cyber Risk Alliance and become part of the family.
What I thought was interesting, it took 3 hours and 48 minutes for me to get the hour update that we were acquired. So that was actually pretty fast.
That's pretty good. Yeah, it's a great fit. It's interesting as people see the news and commenting and congratulating us and asking questions. Obviously the culture here is super important. Our service to the security community is equally as important, and those were that was part of the deal, basically, that those things stay the same. And we wouldn't have it any other way. So I wanted to put that out there. And basically, the other thing, especially for this show, is it gives us more resources, right? So I'm excited for all of the shows. In this show, you can expect a lot of awesome things to come. So more announcements coming. But it gives us a lot more resources at our disposal.
Absolutely. And I think a lot more fun kind of deep dive into technology, kind of like we used to do at Tenable. So
yes,
I'm excited about what we get to bring to this show to help educate all the other enterprise security folks out there.
Absolutely. I'm realizing my new headphones look really weird on camera, like Princess Leia. Did you notice that, Matt?
Yeah, a little bit.
They look ridiculous. Oh, boy. So on to the security news, enterprise security news.
So let's stay on the acquisition path, right?
Yeah, let's do that.
SecureWorks acquired Delve Laboratories. Now, this is an interesting acquisition because Delve supposedly is a full-blown vulnerability management and prioritization company, which means they support their own scanning capabilities, their own prioritization capabilities, and some remediation stuff. You know, we've covered this part of the space for a long time, Paul, because our work at Tenable, I worked at Qualys. This is just an interesting acquisition, right? Because when you think about SecureWorks had a pretty strong relationship with Qualys and using Qualys as their scanning engine. Does this displace the Qualys relationship because now they have their own scanning capabilities and some of this prioritization stuff? Just an interesting acquisition. I'm really curious to see how this plays out.
Yeah, that's this site was blocked by my ad blocker, so I didn't get a chance to read it fully. But yeah, it's a good acquisition, I think, for SecureWorks to be in that space, especially with their managed services as well. I could see them hitting that mid-market small enterprise hard with not only can we help monitor your stuff, but we can also help you prioritize vulnerabilities.
And potentially remediate, right? They have their own technology with Red Cloak, I think, is their kind of endpoint solution that they kind of built out themselves in support. Now they're bringing more native capabilities. It looks like they want to own some of the intellectual property behind some of these security solutions as well.
What else we got? There was, I'm going to say this is pronounced Sysis. Maybe. That's my guess.
Maybe.
That's my. What was your guess? Was your guess? You're going to go with mine, or you got something different?
No, I wanted to say Pixis, but it's C's
not
in the wrong spot. Yeah,
it's PCYSYS. I'm saying Sysis. I'm probably wrong.
Psoriasis.
Yeah.
Spelled,
I was thinking.
Sysis.
Psycho. Anyway, we're going with Sysis. If they want to correct us, please do, because that's the best I could make of it. So they raised $25 million, and they are in the what do we call that market space?
Well, they call it automated cybersecurity testing. So is this breach and attack simulation, or is this actually automated pen testing? Right.
I called it breach and attack simulation, but hey, John Strand is here. Hey, John. Oh, he's muted. Or something.
Muted.
Oh, there you go.
Ouch.
Now we can hear him. Hey, John, welcome.
You can hear me now?
Yes. It's good timing.
Doing really well. Yeah, just came in right whenever we're starting to talk about a potential snake oil company. That's great.
I knew that your detector was going to go off.
Of course.
Well, I think that Matt said it best whenever he said, is this attack simulation or is this automated pen testing? Because those two things are very, very, very different creatures in the industry.
They call it a continuous network penetration testing platform.
Yeah, there we go.
Right.
So it's snake oil. Look,
but John, I think you're right.
Times. I think garbage.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a clear delineation between automating a pen test and the breach and attack simulation, right? Because those words mean very different things.
Yes, and you know, kind of the joke is you can absolutely buy a platform that'll automate a pen test, but it'll be an automation of a very crappy pen test. And we can get into some details about how if you actually look at how modern pen testing works, you're actually going through a lot more than just scanning, looking for vulnerabilities, and then exploiting those vulnerabilities, which a lot of these platforms actually do. So good for them on getting $25 million. That's great.
I hope that they shift to the breach and attack simulation style messaging, because that's something I think every company needs. I think if you're going to have a pen test, you want some real humans behind that.
And we've talked about it extensively. The reason why that's so important is it is really what vulnerability assessment is missing today. If you're going to do BAS or adversarial simulation, if you're not doing BAS and you're just doing vulnerability assessments, then you're missing like 98% of the MITRE attack technique matrix for post-exploitation and techniques.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. It's absolutely something that's needed, but how you actually sell and position is important.
Mm. There was another article. Oh, so 3 signs it's time for a pen test. They had a great opportunity here, I think, to really help organizations understand when it is time for a pen test. I just think they missed the mark. I'm not sure what they were trying to convey in this infographic. They say security and data privacy regulations change, making compliance a moving target. I'm not quite sure how that means you're ready for a pen test. I mean, it could say, hey, you're compliant. Now you're not secure. Maybe you should have a pen test, because that I might get behind. But not compliance is a moving target. And is a pen test really helping you with your compliance? It is part of PCI, but in any case.
Yeah, I was confused. And honestly, this looks like some marketing people got together and they put this together and they talked for maybe 5 to 10 minutes with some pen testers and then threw it together. It's okay. I mean, it was just a bad article. It wasn't clear.
Yeah. So having said that, what are some key indicators where I'm like, I really should have a pen test at this juncture, right, John?
I think it really depends on what you're doing. Like if you're looking at application level pen tests, you should be doing that continuously internally in your organization. That you should be doing that all the time. But for an external pen test, if you're rolling out a massive new product, absolutely you should be getting a pen test. You should be getting a pen test once a year. And remember, the goal of a pen test or even a red team now is to try to identify blind spots and inform the blue team. So it should be something that should be part of like consistent hygiene, rather than saying, oh crap, the spotted frog puked up a mouse, so therefore it's time to get a pen test. You shouldn't be relying on witchcraft and all kinds of weird things. Just put it as part of your regular process and you're going to be fine.
Yeah. I look at certain situations and I'm like, I want to do these 3 major things that I know are gaps. They're not blind spots because I know about them. I've recognized them that we need to do these 3 things. When I'm done with those 3 things, then I want to have a pen test, and then I want to know what my blind spots are, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a level of maturity required before you're ready for a pen test. Mm-hmm. I don't think people who don't have some basic cyber hygiene, vulnerability management, patching, et cetera, right? They have some gaps. They should try to make sure they have them closed. Then go get a pen test, right? But some organizations, they haven't done the basics yet, and all of a sudden they're going out to get a pen test. Well, what do you think's going to come back?
Yep.
Well, and there's some situations. I think it really, like, there's certain levels, right? Whenever we came up with test, we wanted to really bake in the idea of levels, right? You can have a vulnerability assessment. A standard penetration test is a vulnerability assessment with exploitation put on the table. Then you get into red teams. So there's levels, and any firm that you work with today will actually have a good conversation to find out what is the proper level for you. If you've never had anything done before, you may want to start with vulnerability assessment, and you can call it a pen test and whatever. If you've had regular vulnerability assessments and you're ready to see if somebody can actually get in, then maybe you're ready for a pen test. If you're really advanced, then you're probably looking at like a full red team. And any good firm will try to get you into the right package rather than saying, yeah, pen test. We're going to do what we always do. Because honestly, like you said, Matt, that's not selling the right thing.
Netskope is announcing a cloud threat exchange. Now, they say it's supported by a wide range of organizations and feeds that they have certified: VMware, Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, CyberReason, Mimecast, SentinelOne, and Threat Quotient. Together, this ecosystem allows customers to share intelligence across these platforms, including file hashes, malicious URLs, a full IOC exchange. I did this just for John, because I know he thinks that this is how you should protect an enterprise today, is with something like a cloud threat exchange where we can exchange threat intelligence data. These are how people are potentially attacking my network. Therefore, they could attack yours in the same way.
And I believe that there is some level of value whenever we're especially talking about cloud pen tests. And I don't necessarily think from a threat exchange that you're charging for. But the problem, and Paul, we've talked about it extensively on the show too, is attack vectors for the cloud are completely misunderstood, and a lot of organizations don't really address the cloud in the way that it should. They think, well, Amazon's going to protect me or Azure is going to protect me, and they don't understand the limitations. So I do believe that if we look at the larger problem of not understanding cloud attacks, we absolutely need to start sharing narratives and stories about how organizations are actively getting compromised. But boiling it down to IP addresses and URLs, it's like, come on, that's not going to help much any organization at all.
But they address the value by giving this away as a free tool.
I'll take it as free, absolutely, no question about that.
Well,
because that's probably some level of the value. I mean, you got to understand, right? To your point, John. Look, just looking for bad domains and IPs isn't enough, but there's some validity in some of that data. But if it's free and I'm getting it as part of my Netskope deployment, and I can leverage some of that data, maybe get a little contextualization, even though it's not perfect. But look, it's free. Oh, why not?
Well, and honestly, I think we need. I'm not necessarily saying we need an expensive class, but like 504, the Hacker Techniques, Exploits, and Incident Handling class at the SANS Institute. What it does is it actually shows people what these attacks actually look like, and that really helped transform organizations and how they actually did their defenses over the past 20 years. And like I said, the cloud is a completely different creature. And right now, there are very few people. I know Bo has his class, and we're doing some stuff at BHIS. So anytime an organization is trying to share information about what cloud attacks actually look like, I'm all on board. I just don't think that we're at the point where we need to be charging for it. And like you said, if they're not charging for it, they're raising awareness. Hot damn, let's make it happen. That sounds like a good thing for me.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see how many of the I don't know what you call them, information in these threat feeds actually relates to cloud security. It sounds like a lot of these could be not necessarily related to cloud. That this is just regular threat intelligence, malicious URLs and stuff.
Well,
like
that's where I'm getting confused. But also understand they're trying to share it out with Styx and Taxi, which is very, very, very much in that traditional indicators of a compromised mold. And when you're talking about cloud attack vectors, they might be trying to shoehorn something that's square into a round hole, right?
Yeah.
That may not completely match up.
Yeah, because I mean, the concept of an IP address is very abstract in the cloud. They become resources, right? And so when you're trying to share a threat, and to be like, well, I don't know. There's no IP address associated with it, right? Or it changes every time it spins up and down, like a Lambda function.
Well, and you were talking about Fireprox, one of the earlier shows, the tool that we wrote specifically so we can launch cloud attacks from Amazon and we can attack things like Azure and Google Cloud Compute. How the hell do you exchange IP addresses in situations like that?
Yep.
And I could see how this could be used very, very dangerously, right? I could basically put it and say, yeah, these Amazon and Lambdas or, these proxies were attacking and you need to block it. And then an organization blocks that at the edge of their network and it completely shuts down all their functionality between cloud providers. So that's probably my biggest concern is this doesn't, if they're sharing just IP addresses and URLs, it's not really explaining the threats properly. And that terrifies me.
ManageEngine has a service called ADSelfService, which now supports MFA for VPNs, which is kind of interesting. I did not know ManageEngine could, how they help with AD security. I don't know if you've seen that, Matt or John, in your travels.
I did not.
So it's called ADSelfService Plus, an integrated Active Directory self-service password management and single sign-on solution, which now supports MFA for VPNs. Which obviously with COVID they had to make this change, but there's a lot of ways to skin that cat as well.
I still come back to, dude, in this day and age, if you're listening to the show and you don't have two-factor or multi-factor enabled everywhere, you need to stop. And you need to go turn that on now because that is the main attack vector for many organizations today.
Yeah, the shocking part is it took us to get to COVID-19 and a pandemic lockdown to get multi-factor authentication on the VPNs.
Like a standard feature, yeah.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. What else did I think?
What do they call it? Depunctuated articulum?
CrowdStrike had some interesting announcements and it included AWS services that I didn't know existed. Of course, now the story's not loading.
Well, that doesn't surprise anybody. I mean, AWS is like releasing new services like every day. I when I first read this,
Right.
I'm like, ooh, I'm like really excited. And then I was like, well, okay, all the compute services make sense because they're kernel modules, so they're embedding their kernel module on these different stacks. I think fine, that's perfect. But I really was hoping that the some of the services went a little broader. Things like ECS, EKS, Fargate. I don't see those announcements here yet, which means they're still working on some of that stuff.
But if they support Bottle Rocket, so I didn't know what Bottle Rocket was. It's a new Linux-based open source operating system purpose-built by AWS for running containers. Like, cool. Yep. I need this in my life, right? So basically you get the AMI for Bottle Rocket, you put it in EC2, and then you tie it directly to EKS, and it just fits in your pipeline, and it's purpose-built for running containers. I'm like, that I can get behind.
Yep.
Again, because it's Linux-based, it's got a kernel, which means I can
and it's EC2,
install
so
the CrowdStrike agent in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's perfect. But there's a few Amazon services, though, that still I don't think you're going to have kernel level access. And those are the ones I don't see on this list yet, which means that's probably something CrowdStrike's still working through, is because you get some really interesting services in AWS at some point that won't allow kernel modules to be loaded.
That's what I was going to say. At some of those services, Amazon's just not going to open them up, period.
Right. I mean, you can get...
And that's not a bad thing, right?
No.
That's not a bad thing, right? This isn't a rip on CrowdStrike or Amazon. It's just the reality of the situation. And CrowdStrike moving its support into this, I think, is a cool direction for them, because literally everybody who's cool is doing, this cloud-type development. But, yeah, we can't expect them to be able to cover everything because there's a lot of that shit that these different cloud providers are not going to open up the curtain and let people drop down into the kernel on at all.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, John. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I don't want people to think that their endpoint security solution is the panacea for all cloud services, because it won't be. There will be certain limitations where an endpoint will not get opened up by Amazon. And therefore, if you're going to use some of those services, you have to look at potentially other solutions to help you with the security aspects of not being able to load an endpoint product.
I mean, in Lambda, it's when I was reading the documentation, like how you'd get a Chrome driver binary in your Lambda like what if your Lambda function needs to call Chrome? How do you do that in AWS? Do you still have to build a container? Apparently, there's a way you can provide it like a zip file, and it will include the binary inside of the Lambda function. I just don't know how maintainable that is. I don't know if you can script that.
No
like,
idea.
How do you update that? How do you manage that? It is possible, though. Because I was like, well, what if that's part of your application and you don't want to use containers and you have to call this external binary for something? I'm like, you're kind of stuck with containers. There was some workaround, but I wasn't too keen on it. It looked like a hack.
Yeah.
But cool to see CrowdStrike supporting all the new fancy cloud stuff, especially the stuff I didn't. And it does seem like more EC2. Graviton is the certain processor types, Graviton processors, right? So they're supporting those. Amazon Workspaces is a fully managed desktop as a service. So again, you're getting like a full desktop where they could install software on. So yeah.
Yep, exactly right.
Yeah.
I didn't know what Control Tower was. They just have so many services.
Yeah, so many services. This, I think, allows you to manage your EC2 instance pools and stuff. So again, it's EC2 based, which means they'll have more capabilities in an EC2 instance environment, which is why they can probably support aspects of that as well.
This one was really interesting. So Sysdig is partnering with VulnDB to basically be able to discover vulnerabilities inside of containers in the platforms and in languages inside of them. Now, what I thought was most interesting is VulnDB provides more than 76,000 additional vulnerabilities not found in the CVE database. I just thought that as a good public service announcement for readers that rely on CVE. It is not the full picture. I found that in my research too. Other researchers have as well. How they're discovering and reporting on 76,000 that do not have a CVE is kind of interesting, right? Do they get a number? And what are those vulnerabilities exactly?
They're vulnerabilities that could be a combination of things, right? I mean, if you're going to go into the NVD, and get classified as a CVE. There's certain things you have to have, right? There has to be a CPE, a common platform enumeration, to tie to it. So it could be maybe a CPE isn't available for one of these vulnerabilities, potentially, right? Or they haven't been disclosed, or they haven't been adopted by the NVD to be put into the database. I know there's a number of vendors out there, like Synopsys. I think Black Duck had their own security advisories, which was above and beyond a traditional CVE reporting mechanism as well.
But I've heard that that a lot of those companies that are doing that is because CVE doesn't understand or isn't properly classifying them. Is that what you guys are hearing?
Yeah, that too. And VulnDB is that Jay Kuhn's? Yeah. Is this Jay Kuhn's platform? I think so. He's quoted in the article. Risk-based security. We know Jake.
Yep.
Yeah, so they're also calculating a CVSS score for the ones that aren't in CVE, right? Because the algorithm's public and you can calculate that score provided you have the information on it. So
yeah, as long as you have the.
So I've got a question. I've got a question for you too on this threat. Do you know of any vulnerability databases that have hashes of known vulnerable executables and dynamic link libraries and shared object libraries?
Hash based on vulnerability? Yeah.
So here's the idea. I was playing around since we're talking about this. If somebody's listening, hey, you want a product? Congratulations, you're welcome. If you're looking at Sysmon will actually record for all the process execution the hash. So my idea was, if you had a vulnerability database that said these are the hashes of known vulnerable executables, then you could basically be doing vulnerability analysis in real time as things are executing in your environment. And I plugged around on the internet for a while trying to find any databases that had hashes of known vulnerable executables, and I couldn't find anything.
So
commercially,
reversing labs, right?
But they're more focused on malware. Not the vulnerabilities.
That's malware. Not the vulnerable software. Because think about it, Paul, whenever you kick out a patch on Microsoft, it upgrades all of your dynamic link libraries. And that now has new hashes. And those previous hashes for the vulnerable dynamic link libraries is something that you could say, okay, this executable or this dynamic link library or this process is running a hash value that is known to be vulnerable. So you can basically do scanless vulnerability assessments on just doing execution in your environment.
ThreatLocker.
I bet the endpoint vendors can do this. Yeah.
Well, ThreatLocker has some of that built in because they have intelligence on all of the software you might run and what's the latest version and what's not. Also, Vicarious does some of that too because they will actually look forward and look for vulnerabilities in predictive vulnerability analysis inside of the binaries. They could very easily calculate the hash. They did a technical segment, I believe, last week or the week before on Paul Security Weekly, and they've got one coming up this week that talks about how they're doing in-memory protection based on vulnerabilities found in binaries. And they produce a database of the components of software. It probably is not that much to actually be able to calculate the hash of something that they find a vulnerability in.
And even with VulnDB, I was thinking with VulnDB, you can download like the actual executables in many situations. And I'm wondering if you could pull down a full hash list. But you can see how this would be valuable. If you could basically pull Sysmon data, there's no agents. You just basically are pulling the raw data, and you can automatically do vulnerability analysis on the back end of executing software. So something I was playing around with because I wanted to incorporate it in our stack of software that we're doing for our customers, and I couldn't find any databases like that online. So there you go. So there's a product idea.
Yeah, we can get you in touch with some people that might have that, John. I don't know if anything open source though. Yeah, it'd be interesting to have that releases open to the community.
I'm thinking about it, Paul. It's like, holy crap, this is something that CVE should have been doing from the start.
Yeah. No, agreed.
So.
That's what happens when you lose or get your funding kind of that's why we don't have a CCE, right? I mean, we started the project and then they lost funding and the CCEs went out the window.
Yeah.
JFrog is looking at IPO. Is that true?
Yes.
Based on this
Another
article?
one. That'll be, let me do the math. That would be
2. Sumo Logic?
2.
Second this year. Sorry. I had to do some calculus.
1.
I didn't realize that JFrog was that big and popular. I underestimated
Me neither.
their market penetration, which I'm assuming you need.
The article talks about the valuation between Sumo Logic and JFrog. Sumo Logic having more revenue, but JFrog getting a better valuation. But you got to understand what JFrog is. JFrog is a much broader platform. Security is a piece of JFrog.
Yeah. I was going to say they play in just one toe in the water
whole
in
pipeline.
security.
Yeah. I mean, they have Artifactory for artifacts. They've got a CI/CD pipeline. They're doing SecOps in the middle. I mean, they're more in the lines of like a GitLab, I think, right? When you think about end-to-end pipeline and different security capabilities, even though they might be smaller in revenue, they're in a higher growth market. They have a lot of additional capabilities beyond just a security solution here. So I'm not overly surprised, but the article seemed to be surprised that, even though I think Sumo Logic's like $50 million bigger from a revenue perspective, but JFrog's is looking at a better valuation for their IPO. Again, you got to understand the market trends and what's driving the market and where the growth is going to come from.
And the last one is not an area I'm familiar with because I'm not an OpenShift person, but nCipher Security now has HSMs available as Red Hat OpenShift certified containers, delivering enhanced security and providing a root of trust. I think in the enterprise, OpenShift is a really strong player if you're looking at containers, right? Because I think they're solving a lot of the problems that we're like, wait, what do you mean in Docker you just get containers like from the open community, right? I think in OpenShift they've addressed a lot of those issues. That's what it sounds like.
But it seems like it's by geeks, for geeks, from geeks, selling to geeks, though, whenever you're talking about OpenShift. Because I love the stuff. There's a bunch of people like, I just don't know what the hell they're saying. So.
Agree. It has its own language associated with it and its own kind of champions that are all about it. And they're from everything I've seen doing amazing things with it, but it's very specific.
Yeah. And Open doing more with Docker than Docker back in the day, right? I mean, they were way bigger. And now that they're part of IBM and getting integrated into this broader cloud ecosystem that IBM has and everything else, you're going to continue to see large enterprises adopting OpenShift as its platform. All this announcement did was make it easy to deploy HSMs in that environment, which we know is kind of a pain in a cloud environment. And what they did is they made it easy. So hallelujah.
That's pretty cool. Excellent. Well, that is the stories for this week. Thank you, gentlemen. And interviews coming up next. Stay tuned.